BRUCAST is back, baby.
This BRUCAST episode is brought to you by the BRUCAST Store. Explore a store filled with awesome goodies from hoodies to t-shirts to mugs. We've got you covered. Stay in style with BRUCAST. Embrace the shock, set the trend. Visit now brew-cast.com/store. Link below. Like and subscribe if you're listening to Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Please rank the show 5 stars. This will ensure that the podcast is recommended to even more people and allow me to keep doing what I love. BRUCAST also on Instagram, X, and TikTok, where I upload shorts with the highlights of the show. So follow now. BRUCAST on Instagram, X, and TikTok. Links on the description below. You know what? It's giveaway time. Hey there, BRUCAST fans. Are you ready to snag some exclusive BRUCAST gear? Well, listen up. We're giving away a limited edition BRUCAST cap, and it's super easy to enter. All you have to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that's it. You'll be then running to win this awesome cap. But don't wait too long, subscribe now because the giveaway won't last forever. We'll be announcing the lucky winner at the end of October 2024, so stay tuned. Good luck to everyone, and thank you so much for being an amazing part of the BRUCAST community. And once again, subscribe! Our guest today is Matt. So Matt is the co-host of Down Once More Pod, where he brings his sharp wit and love for music, movies, and TV to lighthearted, quirky discussions on pop culture. All right, Matt, how are you doing, my friend?
I am doing very well, and thank you for having me. I have to say, I feel kind of underqualified to be on this podcast. Look at all your past hosts. You've got all these Harvard graduates and people doing much. Me, I just like the sound of my voice and talking about random things that enjoy me. So thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. What can I say? You're an interesting guest. So let's try to have some fun, man.
I'm in. Let's do it.
All right. So before anything, you have a podcast, Down Once More Pod, where the idea to start a podcast came from.
So I've been doing the podcast for about 3 years now. I started the podcast with one of my friends, Rayleigh, and we had reconnected. We knew each other back in like middle school. So long time ago, we both moved away, different places, and we started reconnecting around the pandemic time on Instagram, just chatting back and forth and talking about musicals. And we both kind of shared a love for musicals in general and TV movies and just a very similar sense of humor and like chat. And we're like, you know what? There's not enough podcasts out there. Let's start a podcast, just having some fun and give us a chance to connect and kind of almost use them as mini catch-ups and give us a chance to talk about the things that we enjoy. And so the first year, we just did one episode a month. And each month we reviewed a musical movie and we had some little things we were chatting back and forth in the beginning. Then when we got into year 2, I'm like, I kind of want to see this grow because I really enjoy it. Like it's a hobby. Rayleigh and I both worked full time. And so, but I'm like, I want to kind of invest a little more time in it because I'm enjoying it. I like putting it together. I'm teaching myself video editing and all of this stuff with it. And so started doing weekly episodes. I did 2 that were solo with me and then 2 with Rayleigh together. One was a musical review. One was just random chatting discussions. And on the solo episodes, I started to venture more into doing movie reviews, what to watch, recommendations, doing some tier lists and things like that. And so then this year came around, 2024, year 3. Rayleigh had some personal stuff, had to step away. And so it's been primarily solo all of this year. And then I've brought in my brother to help with some, and we've done some musical reviews, drafts, stuff like that. And just really, it's a way to have fun, talk about people, and not like promoting it a ton because it's great. It's a lot of effort, as I'm sure you know, to run and promote. And you crank out your clips, you crank out your videos. I am impressed. I usually do just the one full episode goes out there, and if I'm lucky, once in a while there will be a teaser trailer or a clip that gets thrown on there as well. So I'm not doing everything I can to grow it, but I'm having fun with it. I'm talking about the things that interest me, and every once in a while there will be an episode that just finds its way into the algorithm and takes off and get a lot of views, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah, it's a fun hobby for sure, and there's always something else that you can be doing. Like I'm always thinking like, what can I do next to improve? I always have this baby step mindset, right? A little bit improvement, and there's always something. There's also last week I just came with the idea of the giveaway, right? There's so many channels doing
Yeah.
giveaway. Why not? So, there's always like those billions of micro things that you can do. So it's really, really, really fun. I know what you mean. And guys, if you're listening to it right now, if you're thinking about starting your own podcast, just do it because, man, it's amazing. There's a technical aspect that, as you mentioned, there's also the social aspect. Like, basically, you can talk about anything that you like. So why not? Yeah.
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 Yeah. I agree. It's at first it can be a little expensive to get all the gear and get everything set up after that, but you don't need top of the line gear to do it. You can do it. There's people who have made it big that record just the audio or video on your phone these days and the different programs. And it's so there's different editing programs that make it so easy that the barrier to entry for a podcast is so low. So if it's something you enjoy, who cares if you're getting as big of an audience? If you're having fun with it, that's all that really matters.
Yeah, yeah, that's the right mindset. That's something that I tell to myself all the time. Like, as long as it's fun, I will keep doing. And it's been about 2 years, and I just keeps getting more fun. So, what can I say? Let's talk about musicals for a second. Before going live, we mentioned the Shrek musical. So,
Yes.
what? I didn't even know there was a Shrek musical.
So I remembered seeing in passing when it first came out because it was on way and they filmed it and it was on Netflix for a while, filmed version of it. But I had never watched it. I didn't know much about it. And so we have in my town, there's a theater that often hosts Broadway national tours. So Broadway, the main place in New York, the big place where all the musicals are trying to get. They'll have their tours that go on that with some kind of larger cast and they're that level of talent that will go tour the country. And so my theater venue, they have season tickets they can do. And last year, Shrek the musical was one on there. And it was one that I wasn't as excited about, partially because I hadn't watched Shrek growing up. Like all my friends had, they were big fans. I watched it for the first time like 3 years ago. And I thought it was good. I thought it was good, but like I was a little past the target audience. So I wasn't sure going into musical what I was gonna think about it. But I loved it. Like I was pleasantly surprised. This was a revamped tour that they did at I think it was actually the beginning of this year. And so I got lucky that our town was the second one in the tour. And so that's my most popular video on YouTube because I reviewed it after it came out and talked about it from like a fresh perspective because I wasn't familiar with the Broadway one before. I hadn't seen that version because there were some songs that were cut, some ones that were changed. The production was completely changed as well and kind of toned back. At the creators of the original Broadway show were the ones that did it to kind of make it a little more accessible and for touring. And I loved it. And it just took off. There were some of the actors and performers from the show that shared it on their pages, that were commenting on the YouTube and reached out. It was just a really cool experience. And that was the big one and I had a lot of fun with. A lot of people came at me too. A lot of people were not happy with the revamped version of the Shrek tour because they toned it back. It did look a little bit more like a high school production. Like the costuming and the set design was more scaled back. And people who were expecting like the Broadway level caliber were a little disappointed with that. But the actors and everyone in the show was fantastic. And so I loved it.
Okay,
it was
so
a good time.
There was a Broadway Shrek the musical that happens in the past, and then it was so successful that they decided to come up with the revamp and tour around the country. Did I get this correctly?
Yeah, so they
Okay.
do tours, even of ones that are still running. A lot of times they do tours so that people who aren't able to go to New York and see it there can still see kind of that level of talent in their own city or within a few hours,
Oh,
which is a really cool concept, and they're what they're doing there. But the creator of Shrek, they kind of rewrote some scenes, took out some songs, changed some staging, so they scaled it back on this new tour that they did. So it was a different kind of, even though the bones were the same, it was still a different show than was on Broadway. So I think a lot of people were curious to hear like what the changes were and what that
mm.
show was like. And so I got lucky with being one of the first reviews out there. And so the algorithm picked it up and it took off.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about Shrek. Like, it became basically Shrek became a saint in the past few years, man.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know what to say. I think saint is the best description of it. Well,
Yeah.
I think first it became a meme, right? Because the movie is very good. How
Yeah.
come you never watched Shrek growing up?
So I grew up a very like conservative. My parents thought there was too much crude humor in it.
Oh,
So I wasn't allowed to watch growing up. That's why I didn't get to see it growing up. Because they previewed it and they thought there was too much crude humor. They're afraid I was going to go around pretending to be farting in the swamp, I think.
yeah, I understand it. And if you watch like Shrek 3, and I think there's even 4, they tone it down a little bit. The crude humor,
Yeah,
yeah.
I went. So I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. I had some friends that they couldn't believe that I'd never seen them. And they're like, we have all the movies on Blu-ray here, borrow them. And so I watched all. I think there's 4 total, or maybe there's 3 that are Shrek, and then there's a couple of the Puss in Boots ones. There's a number of them. But I binge watched all of them in a weekend.
Oh my
And I
god.
thought they were entertaining, but I just didn't have that connection to them like I would have, I think, if I grew up on them and had watched them.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Whenever you see something growing up, there's this emotional connection. But don't worry, you don't need to wait too long. In 2026, apparently Shrek 5 is coming out, so you already caught up, which is good.
Go. Perfect.
I know there's even a Shrek rave that exists now. It's
Yeah.
insane the love people have for this ogre, but it's fun. I think it's fun.
Yeah.
So the musical is good. Would you recommend it? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I would. I would. I had a lot of fun with it. I think they've even made changes when they were on the tour because there was a lot of like pushback. So the actor with Shrek had green face paint on, and then the ogre, like an ogre headband. And that was it. Like, I mean, he had the costume too, but facial wise. And then later on in the tour, I think there was a lot of pushback and kind of complaints about that level and saying that it seemed like they weren't giving a full production for what tickets cost on this tour. And they did a thing with like the full Shrek bald cap with the thing. And so they did increase the production a little bit as the tour went further on. I think I was saying it was like a month or 2 in that they started changing that. But I always appreciate that too. When you start with something and then you get feedback from people and then you adjust. That's what you have to do in life sometimes too. Like you're going one way, and then if you get some constructive criticism and you're open to that and you're open to hearing what people think you could do to improve, or how you could do it better, if it's something that you can do without compromising your vision, your morals, and what you're going for, then that's something you should be open to.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, that's great to hear that they're doing that. But I'm gonna be honest, depending on the movie or the play, some actors, they're so good, they're so I don't know, they have something, they have the sparkle, right? That you just see the character that they're playing. You just forget that they are playing someone else. My example, the one that I have in mind, I think I brought it up already on the podcast, is Michael Fassbender on the movie Steve Jobs. Like, he doesn't resemble anything like Steve Jobs. Of course not. Like, they look completely different physically, but his acting is so on point, is so good. Like 1 minute into the movie, I'm watching Steve Jobs. I'm not watching Michael Fassbender. So
Yeah.
I guess some people just have it. I don't know how this translates on plays. I haven't been a lot to plays. The last one that I watched was and I do love them, but the problem is it's hard to travel, right? They normally take place in big cities, in capitals. The last one that I watched was well, it was a musical, ABBA the music. No, sorry, it's not ABBA the musical. It's
Mamma Mia.
Mamma Mia. Oh, dude, so good. Have you seen it?
Yeah. I haven't seen it live, but I've seen the movie of it, and I like ABBA's music, and so I think Mamma Mia is such a fun musical in general. And I like the second movie too. The second movie was pretty good.
They're movies, right? I never watched the movies.
Yeah, yeah. And that's one that I don't remember because sometimes there's a weird thing with musicals where sometimes it'll be the movie first and then they turn it into a Broadway play, like an actual musical in the theater, and then other times it's a Broadway play or a musical there in the theater, and then it gets turned into a movie. So I don't know what the order was there on Mamma Mia. Now I'm curious.
Let's check it out. So, what came first, the musical or the movie? Mamma Mia. Mamma Mia. What came first?
It's so catchy. It's such and that's one that it's like all ABBA music and it's a little musical. Not sure it's they call it jukebox musical. So if the musical is made up completely of existing songs, then it's called a jukebox musical. So it's not the music wasn't written for the play alone. So Moulin Rouge is another one that's a jukebox musical. I think Rock of Ages is one that's a jukebox musical. There's a lot of that genre of musical. I think it's interesting.
So, when you say jukebox music, what do you mean by that?
So, and I guess I don't know if it's an international thing. So here back in the days, there was the jukebox that you'd have the CDs, you'd go, you'd put your quarter in and you'd select your song and it'd play that. So basically almost like a playlist, a shuffle playlist. So it's something that already existed. So most musicals, they've got a team of people who are writing the music, the score, the lyrics, and the story. But a jukebox musical is they take songs that already exist from other people, either rock songs, classical songs, and they pull it and they write the story around it. So like Mamma Mia, they use the songs of ABBA and they craft this story around it and they have those songs that fit in. But the songs were already written and existed on their own before they were brought into the movie for the musical.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay. Yeah, you need to be creative to kind of link all the songs into a story.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes a whole other level of talent because you're working with something that already exists instead of just creating something from scratch.
Yeah. So I just look it up. Let's read it out. So, was Mamma Mia a movie or a musical first? After Kramer pitched them the idea for an ABBA stage musical, which eventually became Mamma Mia. Okay, that's not the whole phrase. Okay, the musical premiered in London West End in 1999 and went on the top to open on Broadway in 2001. The show saw early success before it was adapted into a movie we know and love today. So the Broadway came first. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And West End is like the London's version of Broadway. So you'll see a lot of shows premiere there and then move to Broadway. And then also a lot of ones move from Broadway to the West End. Those are like the two big musical areas, so to speak.
Oh, that's what it means, West End. Oh my God, I never questioned it. Now it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I learned over the past few years from doing this podcast too, because I started out and neither Rayleigh or I are full like music or musical experts. We talk about it kind of from a novice, from general level. We enjoy the music. Musicals that make us feel something are the ones that we're drawn to and we enjoy. Like that's where I first like grew up on like Disney movies that had the music in them, and my parents liked musicals. So that's where I first got my connection and love for them. And now I feel like music in general can help you connect to emotions and feel so many things. And when you just have that connection, it just kind of tugs at your heartstrings or just makes you feel something. And musicals, I feel like, add a whole other layer to that, because usually the songs in those, they're telling a story and you're getting to know these characters and see what they're going through, and it's just expressed in music and with this passion and this fire, and that's what I love about it. So that's another reason why the podcast came to be.
Yeah, that's a great reason. You know, I was talking with someone the other day on the podcast, and they made the following observation. They said that the body is a music. It's like a music instrument. We have all our nervous systems, all our chakras, and they can all be aligned and tuned depending on the beats around us, you know, on the songs around us. You can go even further and say the whole universe is vibration, and we live in a quantum universe, and everything's vibration, and that's why music is so powerful. And I don't know how much of this is truth, but I do agree. Like when you watch a musical, when you play a game, I don't know if you're into games as well, and the music that you just feel like they put some care and love into the music, like it's such an emotional connection. Like for me, this happens when I play Zelda, for example. Zelda Ocarina of Time, like they have so many beautiful memorable songs that I played as I remember to this day. Same thing with the Miyazaki movies, you know. It's like you just feel like they put their soul into the soundtrack, and it's like 50% of the emotional connection to the characters, in my opinion. And so many directors and game development studios, they just treat music as an afterthought, you know, and it's sad.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is. And that's something that I feel like when it's done right, like you mentioned those games and those movies, that the music and that score almost becomes like another character in itself. Like it's hard to see the game or the movie separated from that soundtrack. I feel like the Lord of the Rings movies are another example of that. Like the score of that is just so masterfully crafted that it makes it what it is, and it's hard to imagine it with those themes behind it just separated out.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. I mean, how many Oscars did Lord of the Rings won? Like 11? Just in one of
Oh, so many. So many. Well, and even talking a little bit like House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, like that theme song has become so big and it's so instantly recognizable that it is what it is. So like so much so in Game of Thrones that when they're doing their House of the Dragon intro, they're like, we're not changing this theme song, this intro song at all. We're going to give you the same song. We'll change the visuals behind it a bit, but it's that song that is the powerful thing that everyone recognizes and that they're sticking with.
Yeah, yeah. I was so surprised when I started watching House of the Dragon. I was like, what? Why are you using the same song? And then I thought for a second, why not? You know, it's such a
Yeah.
good song.
Yeah.
And such a good
Great.
show, man. It's have you watched the second season?
Yep, I did. I finished the second season when it came out, and that's why I didn't review the first season on the podcast. Started reviewing the second season, doing the recaps, mostly because like I just had so many thoughts after the episode that I wanted to get it out there, and I just wanted to talk about it, even though it's just talking into the void when I'm doing it by myself. It's still just wanted to get those thoughts out because a lot of people had mixed feelings on this season. And I mean, there's moments, and I get some of the criticisms in House of the Dragon because you kind of feel like at the end of season one, you're preparing for war, and at the end of season two, you're preparing for war. But I feel like they flesh out characters more, and the character development in the show has been great. Now, one thing I will say, I haven't read the book that it's based on, Fire and Blood, by George R. R. Martin. And so a lot of people have had critiques about the show based on the books too. Because apparently the books are like an oral history. So it's written down what stories they've been told and what people have told them about. And so it's an unreliable narrator. So that's where they've kind of gotten away with some of the stuff in the show. They're like, well, you don't know what was told in the book, if that was actually true or not. And so they take some creative liberties within the show and telling those stories and kind of elaborating it, because they're turning one book into multiple seasons of this show. And so I haven't read the book. I grew up where it was always like with Lord of the Rings. I had to read the books before I could watch the movies. That was the rule in my house. And I have the complete opposite opinion on that now, because I feel like it is so hard for movies, TV shows to live up to the book. So if you read the book first, you're almost always going to be disappointed in the movie or TV show. Where if you do it the opposite way and you watch the show, it's going to be its own thing. It doesn't, you're not comparing it to the book right off the get-go. So you're not going to be disappointed that doesn't match up to that book, and you can enjoy the movie or the TV series for what it is. And then if you're interested and want to learn more, then you can go back and read the book, and then you can get a different love or enjoyment for that book for what it is. Whereas I feel like when you do it the opposite way and you read the book first, you already have that connection, you have in your head what it should be. And then when you're watching the show or movie, you're just like, well, they didn't do that. They didn't adapt that right. I don't like that change. And it just draws more comparison and can take away enjoyment from it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Like every time that I read a book and then watched the movie immediately after, I was just comparing the whole time. I was not enjoying the movie because I was just busy comparing the whole time. But with that said, the Lord of the Rings, going back to the Lord of the Rings, I enjoy I enjoyed the movie more than I enjoyed the books.
Yeah.
And
Oh, same.
I think that's the only case like ever. It was an exceptional experience. All the other times, the book was always better. So you're against that? You say it's always better to watch the movie first nowadays.
Well, I think it kind of depends on the person. If you're someone that it can really hurt your enjoyment of it if it doesn't live up to your expectations, then I feel like you can miss out on enjoying some really good things. I know, like Game of Thrones, for example, I started watching the series first. I then went back and I've read the first two books. So, I mean, he hasn't even done writing those books. So we'll see if those ever finish and come out. But the first book and the first season of the show are very close and very accurate. Like there's some things cut out, but they follow each other pretty closely. And then the second one, they start diverting a lot more. And I think if I would have read all the books before and had seen all these storylines and character arcs that were getting cut from the show, I think it probably would have hurt my enjoyment of the show. But as it was, when I just watched it the show first with kind of nothing in my head and preconceived notions, I really enjoyed the show for what it was. So I don't know. I can see both arguments. But me personally, like I'm not going to go read Fire and Blood that House of the Dragon is based off of. I'm going to wait and I'm going to let the series breathe, because I think they said they're finishing it after 4 seasons. So they announced they're going to start working on season 3 at the end of the year. They said next month it's going to go in pre-production, filming next year, at the beginning of next year. And then I think Ryan Condal, who's the showrunner, said that they're doing one more season after that it'll wrap with 4 seasons. So I like when they have a story that they're wanting to tell and then they're going to cap it out there. But I saw George R. R. Martin, who wrote the books, made a statement that, because he has a blog that he does, that he's going to write a blog about where he thinks they've gone wrong with House of the Dragon, which I have mixed feelings on because I'm interested to hear his thoughts. But at the same time, he is an executive producer on this show and it's still going. So I feel like it kind of looks bad if you're like, well, this is what I think they should have all done differently while the show's still going on.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. That sounds off. Why is doing that?
I don't know. I wonder if it is because, I mean, a lot of times the executive producer role, like you don't have as much on the the scene on the set involvement with it, and so maybe not as much control with what the final product. And maybe it does go completely, like I said, I haven't read the book, maybe it does go completely against his vision for it, and there's things he strongly disagrees with and he's trying to get it out there. Because Game of Thrones, how that series ended, it spoiled, like, kind of soured the taste for a lot of people. And I have people I know that they're like, I will never rewatch that show because of how it ended and how disappointed they were in the ending. That I that doesn't ruin it for me. Like, knowing how it ends, there's still 4 to 5 seasons of fantastic television that I'm not going to punish myself just because of not liking the ending. I'm going to rewatch it, and then I know what's coming, so I can brace myself for it. So didn't the ending as much as a lot of people.
Yeah,
I didn't love it. I felt like it was rushed, but I didn't hate it.
you're talking about the final season of Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if there's anything that J.R.R. Martin should be worried about, complaining about, rewriting, like, is this last fucking season, man. Dude, how they were able to destroy? For me, they destroyed the whole. No, I know you disagree. You still think the whole thing is good.
Yeah.
For me, it destroyed the whole thing. Destroyed, dude.
Yeah.
How did they manage to do that? Like, it was the biggest and the best TV show ever, if I'm not mistaken. It was like bigger than the World Cup. I remember I was traveling at the time. I was just passing at random bars. People like just stop everything to watch Game of Thrones. You know, it was an event. It was like a global event.
I think there's a lot that went wrong with it. I think once they didn't have the source material to pull from anymore,
That's true, yeah.
because they had said that, like, George R. R. Martin, that he had told the showrunners how the story ended, kind of loosely, but they didn't have those 12, because they're long books. They didn't have those like 1,200 pages of, because I think there's supposed to be 2 more books in the series, if I remember right, that he's behind on. I think it's like Winds of Winter and then A Song of Spring are what the final 2 books are supposed to be titled, that just aren't written yet. So they did decent when they had the material to adapt from, but then when they were more like on their own, it kind of started falling apart. And then I feel like, especially in the last 2 seasons, which I think were like 7 episodes and 6 episodes long each, like respectively, it was kind of like, one season that they separated into 2, and it just felt so rushed. Like, Battle of Winterfell was so disappointing for me. That episode and how that ended was so just, I don't know, it just fell flat. And so that I do not agree with. I do not stand by that. The final Daenerys's turn and everything with Bran, I didn't mind that as much if they would have spent more time fleshing it out, because the stuff was, they had been planting the seeds very slowly. You would see some tiny changes in Daenerys in the previous seasons, but then a switch just flipped and it was like instantly. And I think if they would have had more build up to that and given it another season or so where we could see her just that change, it wouldn't have made it feel as dramatic. It would have made a little more sense. And then same with the brand thing. And there were so many things that were just left unexplained. They had made such a big deal about, like, the symbols that the White Walkers and everything had been leaving from like the start of episode 1. That's how the season opened. The show opened with the body parts like laid in a design that the White Walkers had. And then that was teased throughout the later episodes. They'd find writings on the walls with these logos, these symbols and everything. But then there was no payoff to it. Nothing was explained. And I don't know. So that was my big thing about that season, was just how rushed it felt. The final 2 seasons.
Yeah.
They needed more time to breathe and flesh out the story.
It did felt rush. And if I'm not mistaken, I just remember, if I'm not mistaken, they were hired at the time, now fired, by Disney, by Lucasfilm to direct the
Yep.
new whatever new Star Wars trilogy they were planning at the time. And because of the backlash, and not even backlash, but like reason, like they deserve the backlash about the last season of Game of Thrones was so badly received that Disney just said, guys, like we cannot be associated
Yeah.
with you anymore. Like you're fucked up. Like at
Yep.
this, like such a monumental level. Like I don't want to do anything with you, you know. And I think
Yeah.
that's also one of the reasons why they're rushing it, because if they didn't end the Game of Thrones at a certain time frame, they would not be able to sign the contract with Disney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really backfired on them there. Really dropped the ball. But
They got one thing right, I must say. Do you remember the scene where Daenerys is like coming through the gate and there's like this dragon behind her, and you just see the framing is perfect. Just see the wings of the dragon opening just behind her. It's beautiful. Like they got that right. Come on. That was epic.
yeah. Yeah. Yes, yeah. There were some beautiful shots in that series. And there have been in House of the Dragon too. I feel like whoever they've got the cinematography of it and the framing and the direction of those has been great. And you've got some stunning just views and shots from that show.
Yeah. Still talking about the ending of Game of Thrones, like we just mentioned how bad it was. I'm surprised that in House of the Dragon, they are forcing so many connections. They keep saying the winter. I think they said once or twice the winter's coming. There's like a white menace coming from the north, something like that. So they're like in House of the Dragon, they are trying to create this tension or anticipation of the White Walkers that we now know are kind of lame, you know, like the final battle was kind of why they're doing that. Just get away from this, you know.
Well, that's what I feel like was so weird in the second season of House of the Dragon, where there were multiple times when they were talking about, and they specifically referenced the Song of Ice and Fire. They were saying that was the story that had been passed down. And I don't know, maybe it's referenced in the book. I'm not sure, but it just seems so weird and random and so forced in there. Same with then you have Damon, all of his visions that he's having, and then like you said, the visions of the White Walkers. And then that's what I've seen, all sorts of theories and conjecture now. It's like, well, is Damon having those visions? Does he become a White Walker? I'm like, I feel like we're reaching. I feel like that's not a thing, but they're not doing themselves any favors, because it does seem like they're trying to like push that and just go that way. And really, like, I get it's in the same world and it's a prequel to it, but they're just really hitting over the head with some of those aspects and those pieces.
Yeah, but it's a minor thing. I think if we just leave this like minor thing aside, the House of the Dragon is great. I mean, the VFX, like, oh, dude, I watched the other day this making of this one scene. If you haven't watched the show, I'm sorry, I'm gonna spoil an episode for you. There's an episode where Rhaenyra is looking for new dragon riders. Do you remember this episode? And she looks for people who might be blood related, but they're not very sure. And they gather all of those in the hall where they can try to tame a dragon. And well, what happens? I think almost all of them burn to death, and there's a breakdown VFX shot making of how they done this whole scene on YouTube, and gosh, it's amazing. Have you seen it?
I have not. I'll check that, because I do seeing the behind the scenes, and some of the VFX stuff that they can do is insane. I think there's some places that just because of how rushed things get, that you notice it seems like things have been slipping a while, but I couldn't imagine doing that job. Like the attention to detail and then how much it gets picked apart by people is just an insane amount of pressure, and you have to be a perfectionist and so skilled in that role. And so I'll need to check that out, because I always enjoy seeing those things.
Oh, it's great. I can't recommend enough. All right, Matt, I want to ask you something. From what I can see, you're a huge Mean Girls fan.
I do enjoy the Mean Girls musical and the movie, but
So I don't know anything about it. I'm a new. What is Mean Girl? What is this?
okay. So Mean Girls it was a movie back in I want to say early to mid 2000s. It was made as a movie, no music
Okay.
connection at all. By 2004 is when the movie came out. At Lindsay Lohan, and it was Tina Fey wrote and directed it, who she was on Saturday Night Live program here. And so it's basically there's a girl that comes into a high school, and there's a clique of girls who are the popular girls. They call them the plastics because they're shiny, fake, and hard. That's what they say about them. But they're like the cool ones, the clique, the ones you want to be with, but they're kind of bullies. And she ends up getting in their group, and then just kind of seeing them for who they are, then wanting to turn on them. And then it's kind of a story about how she then becomes just like them and a mean girl too, and pushes away her other friends. And it's just kind of a high school comedy drama. And so back in, I want to say like 2019, something like that, Tina Fey, they decided to turn it into a musical. And so it was a Broadway musical, and it ran on Broadway for a while. And then they had decided to turn it into a musical movie. So it's really convoluted. It started just a regular movie, and then they turned it into a stage musical. And then they decided to make a movie of the musical version of it. So both just called Mean Girls. So there's two Mean Girls out there. There's the 2004 one and then the 2024 one. But they did something, and then it was a touring company too. So I've seen it live in theater, the musical, and then I've seen both movies. But what they decided to do with the movie version of the musical is they decided to try to make it more modern, and they updated some of the music. They said to make it appeal more to a TikTok audience. And so it kind of stripped it of all the character and emotion and heart it had as a Broadway musical, I feel like. And so I didn't like the movie nearly as much as the actual musical, but I love the soundtrack from the Broadway cast recording. That's the nice thing about a lot of the Broadway shows, is that the original cast does a recording, so you can listen to all the music in its whole. And so I really love that soundtrack. The movie musical itself is a little hit or miss for me, but Renee Rapp is a fantastic singer, and she's like gonna be taking off as pop. She's headlining festivals and things like that. She's insanely talented, and she's great in the movie. But she was also the main character of the Mean Girl, Regina George. She played her on Broadway as well. But yeah, so I have seen a number of versions of it, and that's why I've got one of the playbills from in the background here. I've got Wicked and then Mean Girls. And I've got others that were strewn about, and I rotate them sometimes. But
That sounds interesting, man. I never heard about it.
Yeah.
It looks to be big, something big. So I'm gonna definitely take a look. Yeah.
the original movie, the 2004 one, that's not a musical, it has just a lot of memes have come out of it. Like there's one where the mom is going, she's like, I'm not a regular mom, I'm a cool mom. There's just a lot of moments that if you've probably seen places before or memes, you just might not know what it's connected to.
Okay. I'm gonna definitely check it out.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about since we mentioned Wicked, it's from Disney. Disney recently released a trailer for their Snow White live action, quote unquote, live action adaptation, which quickly became one of the most disliked YouTube trailers in history. And I would like to know if you have any opinion on this.
I have complicated feelings about this. I, I think Rachel Zegler, who's playing Snow White,
All
I
right.
feel like she is insanely talented. I thought she was really good in West Side Story, and I enjoyed it for what it was, the Ballad of Songbird and Snakes, which is like that Hunger Games, the prequel to that movie. I thought she was really good in it too. I think she's really talented and she has a fantastic voice. So her singing Snow White songs will be great. But they decided to go all CGI with the dwarfs. And so you have these weird, like uncanny valley looking, very fake looking dwarfs next to the live action Snow White. And they have Gal Gadot as the evil queen who played Wonder Woman, just Fast and Furious, and all of these things. But part of the whole evil queen's thing and motivation was she's pissed off because they said Snow White is the fairest of all and not her. And I mean, it's all subjective, I guess, but Gal Gadot is, in my opinion, more attractive than Rachel Zegler. And I just feel like that's weird casting. And there's so many weird things with this because I was seeing different things where said they want to cast little people to play the dwarfs because they felt like that was stereotyping. And I'm like, but that's who instead you're now just having regular people voice acting these little people and taking away those roles. I don't get that because there's not a lot of roles for little people, dwarves in Hollywood. And so it's weird to me that I don't know. I'm not a little person, so maybe it was offensive. Maybe they're not a fan of that. I'm not sure. But it just seems like a weird choice. The completely CGI route, I don't think is the way to go. It looks weird. Disney has this obsession with, I mean, trying to make money and just do live action versions of all these animated classics. And I can't think of a single time that I think the live action one has met up to the standards of the animated one. Because there's just some things you're not going to be able to do in live action that you could do in animated. Like the Lion King ones, for example. They did the live action Lion King. And now at the end of this year, they've got like a prequel to that, Mufasa. That's a new musical. That's going to be live action coming out. And I don't know why we're doing these things live action because part of the things with those movies, you get the emotions and the expressiveness in animated characters and just kind of that goofiness that you can't do in live action when it looks like a real lion because real live lions can't just like make weird faces as they're eating bugs like Simba did in the original Lion King. You can't do that.
Yeah, it's not
So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a very good. I don't know. I don't know either. It's just weird. It's just weird. You mentioned Disney's obsession about making money and I think that's a good point because at the beginning they actually casted like a diverse cast to play the dwarfs. They were not called dwarfs, from what I heard behind the scenes. They were called the seven magical creatures because the whole idea of the movie was to be very inclusive and not offend anyone. So they just hired, I don't know, black people. I don't know who they hired, but apparently offended people either way. And they're like, so let's try not to offend anyone and just do the whole thing on CGI because maybe we're already over budget. We don't have too much time to go through the casting process all over again. Let's just CGI the hell out of this thing and try to push down people's throats. And it just sounds like hell production. I wouldn't be comfortable being on involved in the production of this movie. Let's put it that way.
No, and I have bad news for them. They have offended me with how bad that CGI looks. So they missed their mark there too. They're still failing.
I mean, yeah, like if the old YouTube down votes means anything, like this movie will bomb, like bad. Yeah.
The one thing that could be their saving grace with some of these, I think, is ultimately when it came out, it was a movie for children, right? And so maybe kids will love it. Maybe kids will love the goofy CGI. And I'm not a kid, so I'm not the target market for that. So who knows? Maybe it will be a massive success. But like you said, if the downvotes and everything are any indicator, I don't think so. Like for me, I will watch this eventually, but it will probably be when it's out on Disney Plus. This isn't one I'm gonna go spend $15 on a ticket to see in the theater.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree, man. I'm not. If I'm watching this, it's gonna be like in an airplane trip, or
Yeah.
where's.
Yeah.
But I wanna cover a point. You mentioned Lion King and how easily it was to buy into the cartoon lion doing those funny faces, and I totally agree with you because. I also work in the game industry and I do a lot of art direction and support art direction. And one thing that I truly believe is that if you have a more fantastical story, if you have a story where animals talk, if you have a story where anything magical happens, you should reflect that in your art direction. What that means is that means that your art should be also a little bit more distant from reality itself. That's what I believe. So if you're doing a game or a movie that is completely fantastical, it's like crazy stuff happening. I would suggest to go a little bit more distance from reality. If you want something very realistic, like a documentary or like animal documentary, then you go with the hyper realism like Lion King did. But you're trying to have talking animals with hyper realism. It just hits the uncanny valley for me. It just feels a little bit off. But that's just me. I don't know.
I agree with you 100% on that. So being in the video game industry as well, video game movies, typically very bad.
Borderlands.
Yeah, I just watched Borderlands and it blows my mind because with that, it seems like they missed the mark so far and didn't even realize, I don't know, they missed the point of the whole games and the characters. The casting is wild. I think pretty much everyone except Jack Black as Claptrap was miscast in that movie. And it's wild to me, but I feel like it's hard to adapt video games into movies in general because you're spending that time as that protagonist and usually you're spending minimum 15 to 20 hours with them. That storyline isn't going to adapt as well into a 2-hour movie. I think HBO did a pretty good job with The Last of Us. Season 1. I enjoyed that and I reviewed that on the pod too. That was the first like weekly recaps I started doing was for The Last of Us. And it's not perfect. But I think it got the core of the games and the heart of the first game pretty well. I am very nervous about season 2 and how they're going to do this story. Because I preferred The Last of Us 2 over the first Last of Us game playing it. So I played them back to back. I played through the first Last of Us game right before Last of Us 2 came out. And I just thought the story that The Last of Us 2 told, I get where there's certain things that made people upset, especially people who played The Last of Us multiple times when it first came out, had the deep connections. But the story and the gameplay in The Last of Us 2, Last of Us Part 2, I enjoyed, and it was almost somehow in a way it almost seems impossible with how The Last of Us 1 the story is. It's more heartbreaking, it's more brutal, it's more bleak in that world, and some parts of it just resonate on like a human level with those characters and what Ellie and what everyone's going through.
Just for context, for those who do not know The Last of Us, could you briefly just explain real quick?
Yeah. So the Last of Us games, PlayStation games by Naughty Dog Studios, it is about Joel and Ellie who are kind of thrown together almost in a father-daughter role, even though
Yeah.
they're not, in the middle of the apocalypse when there is a virus, an infection out there with a fungus that's turned people into monsters. Basically, it's a new take on the zombie kind of apocalypse and what's going on there. And it's just their journey trying to help find and develop a cure. Because this kind of a spoiler, but not really, because told in like the first episode or two, Ellie is immune to the virus. And so they're trying to help get her across the country to help develop a cure for everyone else. And there's a lot of stuff that goes down and happens in that. But the series stars Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal as Joel and Ellie, respectively. And it was on HBO. And I thought it was a really good adaptation of the game while still kind of making it their own a little bit, where it's not a shot for shot remake, but there are scenes that are pulled directly from the games, and then they are able to build up some of those characters a little more, and then also tone down, which I think in some cases is okay, some of the over the top brutality that's in the game. So I feel like it makes it a little more accessible as well. But
All right. So with all of that said, you like let me rephrase my question. So when
okay.
introducing The Last of Us, one of the first things you mentioned is like this kind of father and daughter relationship that exists between Joe and Ellie. And that's kind of what the whole story is about. Of course, there's zombie setting and everything, but that's basically what the whole first game or TV show, first season of the TV show is about, and that's what fans felt in love with. And what my problem with The Last of Us Part Two is that they just removed that. So like
Yeah.
for me, the main thing of the whole series is gone, and so it was a good game, but for me not as emotionally involving as the first one. So I would like to ask you, why do you prefer the second one?
I think it was I definitely get what you're saying. You're pulling away that heart of it, which was Joel and Ellie's connection. But I think what I really latched on to and enjoyed in the second game was it saying you had that whole game building that connection and what was at the heart of it. And then when that gets ripped away, what that does to a person. So you're able to see how Ellie, how you saw it build up her relationship with Joel, how she had felt like she was on her own and she had to do everything on her own. And so independent in the first game, and then finally kind of let Joel in and bonded with him. And then where the second game opens up, they're a little bit on the outs because they're fighting about stuff. And you get some backstory from that as the game goes on. But then you see where they're not really in a good place. And then he gets, spoiler alert for the games and especially coming go here. So skip it if you don't want to hear that. But then he just gets brutally murdered in front of her. And that's taken away. And then it sets her on this just path of rage and wanting to seek revenge, and you get to see more of her character like growing with this one track mindset, and then what that does to her, and then what it does to the people around her as she's just going through these emotions of this loss. And then we get to see in the second half of it, you get to see Abby's point of view, which a bunch of people hated that, which I get. Like it was, she brutally murders the most beloved character in the series. I get that. But seeing how what Joel's actions had done to her family and what how it had driven her and what her motivations were, I really enjoyed that aspect and that kind of full picture. Because I feel like a lot of times you don't get to see, you just get to see what the heroes, the protagonists do, and you don't get to see what their actions, how it affected other people, and what other kind of chain reaction it could have triggered, what kind of butterfly effect there. And you do in that game, in that series. And so I thought that was really interesting. I thought it was a super bold decision to take it, and I respected it. I enjoyed it.
That's a valid point. It's a very good answer. Thank you for that. So,
Welcome.
one more question. As far as I know, like rumors, like internet rumors, etc., they are thinking, or if not already developing, The Last of Us Part 3. With that said, what do you think it should be about?
I don't know. It's been long enough since I finished 2. I kind of remember how it left off, but not super well. For the TV series, I did an episode where I pitched it. I don't think they should jump right into part 2 of the game with season 2 of the series, because part 2 of the game, it has like some flashbacks built in from behind after the end of the first game and beginning of the second. I think they should build out another season with Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey and showing Joel and Ellie's relationship. Give Bella Ramsey some time to age as well, so she looks more like the older Ellie. And so you kind of have that in between instead of it being told in flashbacks. And then you find a way, you have the season end with season 2 end with Joel's murder. End of episode 9. So the end of that penultimate episode, and Abby killing Joel. And episode 10 is Ellie getting ready to take off and head after her in Seattle. And that episode 10 ends with her going into Seattle after them. So that's my pitch for the TV series. As for the third game, like I said, I don't remember enough about how the second game ends to have a good pitch for that. I remember there's an Ellie and Abby showdown with, was it Lev? Is Lev
There's showdown number 1, there's showdown number 2, there's showdown. It drags so much.
There's so many different showdowns.
It's just drags to find the ending of part 2.
I was starting a replay, and then the problem is I don't have as much time to game as I would like, or as I used to. So I have and there's new games coming out that intrigue me. And so I just jump back and forth, and I haven't finished my replay. I plan on finishing it before season 2 of the show comes out. Because I want to. I did a replay of the first game before season 1 of the show came out, so that I could do some recaps and stuff was still fresh in my mind. But so I don't have a good pitch for part 3, unfortunately.
Well,
do you remember it well enough? Do you have a good pitch?
I have a good pitch. I think they should move away as far as they can from Ellie, Abby, Joe. Whatever happened. You know, go to Japan. Like the world of The Last of Us is so much bigger than just Ellie, Joe, and like those people. You know, go to China. Like what happened in China. You know, I think they can come up with so many amazing stories in the same world. You know, so that would be my recommendation to the game developers, because why not? You know, it's like Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars is a little bit saturated at the moment. I think Lucasfilm is kind of lost, but you know what I mean. What I mean, like, it's such a big universe. Just tell other stories. That would be my recommendation for the game. As for the TV show, I really like what you proposed. But if I were HBO, I would just kill Joe in the first episode, because Pedro Pascal, man, his salary must be so expensive.
That's fair. That's fair.
He's everywhere. He's like Mr. Fantastic now. So
yeah, which is wild. Which I'm excited for that movie. So Marvel's had some hit or miss ones lately, but I'm enjoying the new Captain America. I feel like looks intriguing. I like that casting, and the kind of direction that they're going with Fantastic Four also sounds intriguing. I don't know that I love Robert Downey Jr.'s coming back as Doctor Doom, but time will tell.
Ooh, let's not get into it. Matt, was an absolute pleasure. Do you have any final remarks which not related to Robert Downey Jr.?
Because that'll get us on a whole long bunny trail. No, not really. Just that I really appreciate you having me on. I had an absolute blast chatting, just kind of movie, musicals, things like that in general. Just kind of a general encouraging people find something you're passionate about and find something that can kind of connect you to that and give you something to enjoy for a hobby. Like that's what this podcast was for me. Like I don't do it for profit. I do it for fun. I did it to connect with my friends, to just talk about the things that I'm passionate about and give me something to enjoy. And it's been a blast. Like I said, I've been doing it 3 years. Like you were saying at the beginning too, like it's, if you have a passion for something and you want to talk, start a podcast, barrier to entry, pretty low. Do it. It's easy to get on the podcast platforms. There's other services that'll help put things out there for you depending on how much money you want to spend. Go ahead and do it. Pursue your passions. Have fun with it. It's not about whether you make money, get a ton of views. It's if you're having fun, keep doing it.
Beautiful. Matt, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. We're going to make sure to leave your podcast, the link in the link. And the link to your podcast on the description below, of course. And see you next time, man. Thanks so much.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. You know what? It's giveaway time. Hey there, BRUCAST fans. Are you ready to snag some exclusive BRUCAST gear? Well, listen up. We're giving away a limited edition BRUCAST cap, and it's super easy to enter. All you have to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that's it. You'll be then running to win this awesome cap, but it won't last forever, so subscribe. We'll be announcing the luck winner at the end of October 2024, so stay tuned, and good luck to everyone. And thank you so much for being such an amazing BRUCAST fan and part of the BRUCAST community. Once again, subscribe. Matt, it was a pleasure. See you next time, everyone. Bye-bye.
See ya.
All right, so how was it? Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. If it's your first time watching the show, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please rank the show 5 stars. This will ensure that the podcast is recommended to even more people and allow me to keep doing what I love. Check out now the BRUCAST store, Explore store, filled with awesome goodies from hoodies to t-shirts to mugs. We've got you covered. Stay in style with BRUCAST. Embrace the shock, set the trend. Buy now at brew-cast.com/store. Again, that's brew-cast.com/store. Link on the description below. Be a BRUCAST model and get free stuff. We'd love to see how you and your loved ones enjoy BRUCAST. Snap a picture of yourself, your family, your friends, or even your pets wearing BRUCAST merch, or watching an episode of the show and send it to us and become part of BRUCAST. We'll feature you and your pictures at the end of every episode, just like the ones you're seeing on the screen right now. You can upload your pictures at brew-cast.com/contact or tag us on social media. Alright everyone, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much and see you next time. Bye bye.